sacred practices. We mentioned fasting earlier. This is a sacred practice. It's kind of an experiential element that a lot of religions share. And then there are also sacred actions, kind of an ethical element to each religion. Again, there's not a universal rule. We say that the golden rule is universal, but that's not the case. There are elements of other religions that say the golden rule doesn't apply. Certain people in Africa that say, no, you're not supposed to do unto others as you would have done unto yourselves, because what if you like to punch yourself in the face? If you go and punch another person in the face, and they don't want that done to themselves, then all you're going to say is, well, I wanted it done to me, and so I thought you might want it done unto you. That doesn't work. So these people in Africa, instead, their kind of golden rule, you might say, is do unto others that which they would have done unto themselves. So again, you don't see universal ethical applications, but you do see a universal need for ethics that come out of religious beliefs. Now, as we talk about these religions, we'll be looking at how Prothero defines the greatest religions. Now, he doesn't define them in terms of sheer numbers, but in terms of impact and in terms of relevance. So he ranks Islam first, Christianity second, Confucianism third, and so on and so forth. You get Yoruba spirituality on there, which is strange because most people wouldn't even know what that is. You get Judaism on there, which most people would agree with, but it's kind of funny because it's one of the smallest religions in the world in terms of the great religions, but it's had a fantastic historical and even contemporary impact. And so that'll kind of drive our discussion. Now, as we look at these greatest religions, we also want to look at the religious demographics. Let's look at the world first. As you look at the world here, you get this wonderful color map showing you the religions of the world, and you start to see the geographical representations of faith in this world. You look at the United States, and you see this blue that says Protestant Christianity. Then you look over at Russia, and it's got this pink that's Orthodox Christianity. And then you look at the Middle East and North Africa, and you see this dark green, which represents Sunni Islam. And then you look at Iran there and Iraq, and you start to see some Shiite Islam that's there, or Islam that other groups, in other parts. You start to see that orange in India, which is kind of this bastion of Hinduism. Okay, and then you see Chinese folk religion being in China, and the sliver of red there in the Middle East, that is Israel, where Judaism is the majority religion. Okay, so you start to get this idea that religion is not only a belief system, but a geographical reality. Of course, there's diversity in all these different countries, and you see that represented by dashed lines at times. But understand that uh, there's still a geographical understanding to religion, and people tend to group themselves according to the religion that they share. Okay. Now, religion in the United States, religious shifts are happening throughout the United States and indeed throughout the world as people migrate. You can look at this and see the Roman Catholics. Again, they dropped by 2% in 10 years, but then they rose by 1%. What's the answer to that? How did that happen? Great outreach? No. An influx of Hispanic peoples moving into the United States. And so you've had this shift now where if you were to just look at Roman Catholicism without immigration, it probably would be down around 22% of the population by now. But indeed, it's on the rise again. Not because they're doing outreach, not because they're bringing in new practitioners from the United States. They're bringing in new Catholics, well, people who were Catholic, rather, from South America and Central America. So it's changing the makeup of Roman Catholicism and increasing the numbers at the same time. But it's a demographic shift, not necessarily an outreach shift. Now you see in the other Christian denominations, um, again, you see this drop from 60% to 52% in 10 years there from like 1990 to 2000. Um, and then you see it kind of plateau out a little bit. It's only dropped a couple more percents in the next 7 years between 2001 and 2008. Again, something having to do with demographics, people moving from Africa, South America, and Central America, bringing their Pentecostal Christianity. We see that Pentecostalism is on the rise, whereas mainline denominations like Lutherans and Methodists and Episcopalians, Presbyterians, they're on the decline still. Other religions slowly gaining as well with this immigration that's happening from 3.3% in 1990 to 3.9%. And that's a ball, like a snowball, that'll keep, I think, gaining and rolling as time goes on. And that's something to be aware of. The biggest shift, I think, maybe isn't in the number of people who actually believe this, that actually say there is no God or I don't have any religion, but the number of people who are openly professing it is growing from 8% in 1990 to 15% in 2008, and I think that number is closer to 16 or 17% today. With the rise in new atheism in 2001, really is kind of when that got its start. After the events of September 11th, they had a lot of impetus to start speaking out against religion. I think you've had a strengthening and an encouraging of the atheist, agnostic, non-religion community for them to come out and say, yeah, I don't have a religion or I don't believe in any deities. Um, they feel a little stronger to start saying that. That's an interesting thing to be aware of as well. Here are a couple maps about religion in America, very interesting things. But religious adherence as a percentage of all residents. The dark red being more than 75%, the less than 35 being that light yellow. You can kind of see there's a lot of dark red in places like Utah, North and South Dakota, southern Wisconsin, southern Minnesota and Wisconsin, Iowa, and then they're in Texas, Oklahoma. And then you see a lot more light yellow up in, Washington and Oregon and Northern California. Very interesting indeed to see some of those um, religious adherence numbers, to see those pockets of counties that people aren't very religious. Now here in Texas, we're down in Houston, near the Gulf. We're kind of a nice shade of rosy pink, so we've got plenty of religious adherence, 50 to 75% here in Harris County. Leading church bodies. This is an even more revealing map to see that red there. That's Southern Baptist. Man, they claim a lot of counties. They're a major part of what it means to be religious in the South. But then you've got Christian mixed in there, and you got Methodist mixed in there. Then you go up to the north and you find this Lutheran contingent. Most people go, really? There's that many Lutherans? But yeah, you look to North, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and you start to see all these Lutherans, which is kind of strange. Then you see that brown, the Latter-day Saints. They're in Utah and Idaho and Arizona and Nevada, kind of this very geographical contingent. This map looks very similar to that map of the world we were looking at earlier. You see some mix, but you also see a geographical spread of a religion. That religion, again, they tend to group themselves, or they tend to spread in one geographical location. Now, the forces of change. Um, Religion is changing in America. It's been changing over the last 30 years, and it's something we need to be aware of. Um, Whether it's becoming more secular, or people are more willing to speak out against religion, or that we're seeing the religious demographics change, say for in Roman Catholicism, or the makeup of Christianity is changing from Roman Catholic or Southern Baptist to more Pentecostal, more non-denominational. I would also say that other religions are coming in, like Yoruba spirituality. It no longer just means voodoo in New Orleans. It also now means Yoruba spirituality in a place like Houston, where we've got a lot of Nigerians moving here. And that has an impact on Christianity as well, as a lot of these Nigerians are Christian, and they bring their Yoruba spirituality into their Christianity. So it is good to be aware that religion is changing. It always has been and always will be. This is a quote from Diana Eck that says, "The religious landscape of America has changed radically in the past 30 years, but most of us have not yet begun to see the dimensions and scope of that change. So gradual has it been, and yet so colossal. This is an astonishing new reality." So I think we're going to become more aware of that as we look at the religions that are at work in our world and in our nation and in our communities as well. And that's an important thing to be aware of, that these forces of change, the demographic shifts, the availability of information on the internet or in books and libraries, this postmodern idea that everyone's got something to say in the conversation, and Western syncretism that occurs. That's not all happening kind of a wider level. It's also happening at a local level. Timothy Beale shares that religion is always first and foremost local. It lives and thrives in particular places, cultures, and people. And so in our class, we looked at religion in Houston. We looked at some of the numbers, the percentages. Looking at the percentages is one thing, but then looking at the numbers is another. Saying that there's 2 million Roman Catholics, the majority of them Hispanic. And then, Southern Baptist has got the next big numbers. And then United Methodist, interestingly enough, and then Muslims. 2.8% doesn't seem too impressive, but when you see that there are 170,000 Muslims in the Houston metro area, it's quite a few. And then to note that other, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, New Age, etc., that's another 710,000. So you're looking at, nearly 1 million people in the Houston metro area that are not Christian. And so it's really good to be aware. If 1/6 of your population is not Christian, what do they believe? And so that's one of the reasons why we're doing this course, is to understand what about